Have you heard? Marana has unforgettable festivals and events. From parades to fireworks, rodeo competitions to light shows, we'll show you a good time. Learn more about the Marana Signature Event Series by visiting maranaaz.gov/events.
Need help with your utility bills? Marana's Utility Assistance Program provides up to $500 per household once a year to help qualifying residents cover electric, gas, or water costs. This free program is designed to prevent financial hardship and keep your home running. Learn more and apply at maranaaz.gov/CDBG because everyone deserves a little support when they need it most.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Town, where I sit down with Marana staff to answer your burning questions about our beautiful community. My name is Terry Rozema, and I'm the town manager for the town, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk with the Town. My name is Terry, and I am your host, and today we are joined by our Parks Director, Jim Conroy, and the town attorney, Jane Fairall. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, so today I have these guys here because a question came up about HOA parks versus town parks. And what's the difference, and can HOAs just turn their parks over to the town so that they can lower their HOA fees? And we're going to get to that in a minute, but before we do that, I've got an icebreaker. And since we're talking about parks and recs, and I got a couple of athletes here in the room, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the athletes growing up, what kind of sports you got into, because Jim played a couple of sports, did powerlifting, some football. Is that right, Jim?
That's correct.
That's correct. Jane was a big-time softball player.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm probably going to embarrass him a little bit because I want to talk about your life as a. Let's start here with Jane and life as a softball player. You played for a long time. Tell us a little bit about that, Jane.
Yes, I actually started playing boys baseball when I first started out.
Nice. So it was like the Sandlot, and Jane was the only girl on the field.
Yeah, there was one other girl, actually.
Okay.
My best friend. That's probably why we were friends.
Who's better?
We both love sports. I was better defensively. She was a better hitter than me.
She was a better hitter, but you were better in the field.
Me, a little
Okay.
stronger, yeah.
Yeah.
So I started playing when I was 7 or 8, playing with boys the first couple of years in Frontier Little League over at Fort Lowell Park in Tucson.
Oh, wow.
And then I
We won't go back to whatever year that was.
Yeah.
We'll just say it was Fort Lowell Park.
Then I switched to softball when I was about 9 or 10. And I played all through high school, and I played club sports, travel tournament team. I didn't play in college. But I continued to play slow pitch softball until I was about 35 when my son went to kindergarten and I couldn't spend as much time out at sports park anymore.
Yeah. So big time into sports, still love sports. You spend time watching it. You got a son, actually, that's in the sports world.
Yes, he works in sports media up in Phoenix, covers the Arizona Cardinals and the Arizona Wildcats.
Yeah, how cool. Damon, right?
Yes, Damon.
Yeah. All right, so let's turn our attention back over here to Jim Conroy. Probably not many people know that Jim was a renowned powerlifter. Jim, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I got into weight training as a high school football player and enjoyed it. And then I started to compete in powerlifting, the 3 lifts, the squat, bench, press, and deadlift. And I competed.
Which one was your best? Your favorite and your best.
I like them all.
You like them all.
I could have been an attorney, Jane, right? It depends.
It depends.
It's
like a good parent. I love all my children the same.
But I did enjoy all those movements, and anyway, it was a good activity through college. I enjoyed it, and I started to compete on a local, then national level, and it was just really a good outlet for me as a young person and going through college.
Yeah. So Jim's going to be modest here. He's not going to spill the beans. And tell everybody that he was actually a national champion in powerlifting. Isn't that right, Jim?
Yeah, my senior year, the championship was held. I went to a Division III school, Rockport State University in upstate New York, between Rochester and Buffalo. And the national championship for powerlifting that year was at Louisiana Tech in Ruston, Louisiana. And I was fortunate, 181-pound weight class, I won the national championship in my weight class.
That's fantastic. Against D1 schools.
It was.
Yeah,
Wow, I
that's
didn't know
impressive.
that.
That's impressive.
It is impressive.
Yeah.
I feel myself blushing.
I told you I might embarrass you. I didn't tell him what the icebreaker was going to be. I caught them both cold. I thought it might embarrass them a little bit, but I wanted to talk about it anyways because I think it's pretty cool. And we are talking about recreation and athletics here. Specifically, we're going to talk right now about parks. And so I'm going to start over here with Jane. If you can just tell me the difference between the parks that are in a neighborhood that belong to the HOA and the parks in our community that are town parks.
Well, typically the town parks are a little bigger parks. They're more of a regional park that serves a wider base of the citizenry, whereas an HOA park is more of a community park for the subdivision, for the people that live there, and typically it's a little smaller. And it doesn't draw others from outside that neighborhood for the most part.
What if somebody from outside the neighborhood comes into a neighborhood park? What can be done?
I think they can use them.
Yeah, kind of what I thought. Yeah. So a HOA park is paid for by HOA dues, I assume?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And town parks you don't pay any dues for town parks?
No, they would be paid, in some cases, they're paid through development impact fees at the time that they're being built.
Explain the development impact fee.
Development impact fees are when a subdivision or a business, a new development comes into the town. We have development impact fees that are charged proportionately to the impacts of the development. They pay fees for certain streets or for water and wastewater and for certain parks. And again, those are typically the bigger, more regionally used parks that would end up being paid for through development impact fees.
Okay, so why would we have development impact fees? Because they're having an impact on the development itself is having an impact on the community, and therefore they need to pay their fair share. I mean, what's kind of the thought process behind that?
Correct. It's kind of this is the way that development pays for itself is through those development impact fees. When we have new developments coming in for new residents, we don't want pre-existing residents to pay for the things that are going to serve the new developments that are being caused by the new development coming in.
Okay. I'm going to jump over to Jim for a minute. And Jim, from your perspective, difference between an HOA park and a town park?
Yeah, I think Jane hit the nail on the head. It's really the scope of service. You know, a town park, as Jane alluded to, it's a destination. You're going there to do an activity. It could be a splash pad, which are extremely popular. You know, you really don't see that in an HOA park. Could be an athletic field. You know, our athletic fields, the majority of our athletic fields have lights because it's where we live. And to play ball, right? Sun goes down, it's 110, and then at night you're playing in 85-degree weather. But 70, 80-foot light poles right now, Terry, to light a field is about $1.5 million or so, and we have many fields in our system, so it's a destination for people come to the park and play ball. I'll just use an example: Orme Harn in North Marana, or you could use Crossroads in Connell Ranch, either one. But in any given night, say during Little League season, which is pretty much they start tryouts in late February, it runs through July. You can have 500 families per night at those fields. They play 2 different time slots, so you have like 200 plus people coming in for a 5 or 6 o'clock game, 7 o'clock game. It just shifts. So with 500 people using a park many months out of the year, and I'm just using our spring for baseball, softball, because it's like that with the other sports too throughout the year. There's a whole other level of service. We have 2 shifts. We start at 6 a.m., we go to 10 p.m. Reason we go to 10 p.m. is those 500 families using those parks. So when you go into one of our restrooms, and we take a lot of pride in this, and we hear about this from our our citizens too. They appreciate it. At 8 o'clock at night, if a child or whomever was sick in a restroom, we have it cleaned up pretty much within 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So, restrooms, here again, is amenity, just like the 60, 80-foot athletic light poles, depending upon what the design is that we have. You're not going to see those in a HOA, but you're also not going to see restrooms in an HOA. If there is a restroom in an HOA in town, I'm not aware of it. But just those two amenities alone. Parking. People don't think about parking. But here again, back to what Jane had said about we're a destination. To bring in those 200, 300, 400, 500 folks into a park, you need parking.
A lot of parking.
A lot of parking. So that's another.
So is it safe to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is it safe to say then that in most of the neighborhood parks, people are walking to those parks and utilizing them for the most part, and driving to the larger district parks? And tell us too a little bit about difference in size. So, Crossroads Park, how big is that compared to, say, a Paws Park or whatever that park is? What do they call that in Gladden Farms? Paws and Claws?
Paws and Claws. And they did a great job. So Crossroads Park is just a little under 49 acres. And an average, I would say, I don't have that exact number, but I think I'm probably pretty close on this. I would say an average HOA park is maybe an acre. That'd be a good size park.
Okay.
I have to say, too, you mentioned the dog park that the HOA did. I think that in Conroy Ranch, I think in North Marana, you mentioned Gladden Farms, Dove Mountain, I think the developers have done a great job on their parks. And it's not like we're in the blind or they're in the blind. We have communication on what they're going to build. So it makes sense.
So town's working in conjunction with the developers to say, hey, these are the things that work well and are acceptable to us.
There is a comprehensive plan that I'm sure people get who are involved in planning meetings or in mayor and council presentations that I do. But I do remind people regularly of our 10-year master plan, because it's
I think I've heard you mention that a time or two.
I know. I'm over the top on it. But I am proud of the fact that as a town that we have been very disciplined to use our planning documents. And it's a good document. I'm in and out of it multiple times a week. Sometimes in a day, I'm in and out 3 times. But Terry, to that point, also on the broader perspective of the town, when these smaller HOA parks, these developers are not working in the dark. We have a standard for irrigation. We have a standard for a ramada. Any amenity that they put in, there's a standard that the town requires. And we have a good relationship. I mean, we communicate. And as a parks director, here again, it's something you don't talk about, but I regularly will act as a consultant for them, when they need maintenance for a playground, for instance.
Good points from both of you. I want to ask for a second, because I'm aware of at least maybe a couple of situations where a developer has been responsible per a development agreement, and this might be a question for Jane, but either one of you can hop in on this. A development agreement where a developer has built amenities in a park that is then turned over to the town. So how does that, what's the difference there between an HOA and an amenity that's built, like, say, the soccer fields down at Heritage Park, or is that Gladden Park, Heritage Park?
Yeah, Gladden Community Park. Yep.
Yeah, Gladden Community Park.
Yep.
That's not an HOA park, that's a town park, but the soccer fields were actually built by a developer and then turned over to the town. So how can we do that sometimes, and then other times we leave the amenity with the neighborhood?
Well, I think it kind of is the same, goes back to just what Jim and I were just explaining. It's the nature of the amenity and who is going to use the amenity. And we typically, for example, with the soccer fields, we had an agreement ahead of time with the developer of Gladden Farms to build that, and that it would eventually be dedicated to the town, and the town would take over maintenance. So that's something that the development agreement already said about that. But the reason for it, behind it, is because it was an amenity that would draw from, it would be a destination, as Jim said, and it would draw people from outside Gladden Farms. So that, I think that is the key for when the town is going to own the park versus when the HOA is going to own the park. And Jim, I don't know if you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just piggyback on that. This system works really well. Again, Jane would have crafted that document and negotiated with the developer. I jump in when we start the design process, worked very closely with the designer. The developer there took 100% our recommendations on the complete construction of that plan, even though they were paying for it. And then at the completion of it, as Jane had said, then we took over the management of those fields. It worked out great. End of the day, Terry, service.
And we're doing a similar thing right now down in Saguaro Bloom, are we not?
We are. Yes, we are.
They're the developers completing phase 1. We're going to complete phase 2, but in the end, phase 1 and phase 2 are going to belong to the town, be cared for by the town, paid for by the town, et cetera.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. And that's another one similar to Gladden Farms. They'll have 3 athletic fields, 2 baseball and softball fields, and a soccer field, which will be lit with the high-end lights, which I was referring to. Sport courts, 2 large dog parks, 20 acres developed on a 29-acre parcel with over a mile of walking paths. Here again, that's going to serve the 4,000 plus homes that are in that immediate, like within a mile of that actual location. So from a service perspective, there again, I'm illustrating that because of the comprehensive thinking of what we're trying to do as a town on serving populations, east, west, north, south. I received a text last night from, speaking of a destination, and here again, this happened yesterday, a local church. I received a text from the organizer of it just saying, thank you, staff really stepped up, did a nice job helping us. He served 600 people at a cookout. 600 people came to Orome at the pavilion, and that's very standard at any one of our 35 plus ramadas that are in the system. Excellent. Some are smaller than others, but back to destination, accommodating large groups, restrooms, parking, the infrastructure to, 600, people coming into the park. That's not uncommon at all. So just to the point to illustrate what the town park service does versus the HOA. And I think it works really well. Excellent. I really do. I think they complement each other.
So the town has some requirements that are set in place for developers when neighborhoods come in and they're going to build residential units, they're going to build apartment complexes, whatever the case may be. And we require a certain amount of open space or recreational space that they have to build and maintain themselves. So I think I'll go to Jane on this. Can you talk a little bit about what that requirement is? And then perhaps both of you can cover why we have such a requirement in our town.
Yeah, our land development code, which is Title 17 of the town's code, has recreational subdivision requirements embedded within it. And we actually updated those sometime with it. I think it was 2021, I want to say, but we increased some of the requirements of what a developer has, how much parks and recreation space a developer needs to build when they're building a subdivision. And it increases as the lots get smaller. So when you have a subdivision that has smaller lots, smaller homes, there's a higher requirement. You have to have more green space, more parks and rec
What's the
space.
logic behind that? That sounds very logical to me, but I want to make sure our listeners understand why.
I think it's because they don't have as much space on their lot. They don't have as big of a backyard, perhaps. Maybe they have a patio, maybe something very small. So you want
Mayor Honey used to say something. He used to say they need to be able to
throw a frisbee.
Throw a frisbee, that's
that
right.
was what Mayor Honey would say. And we wanted to have that within walking distance of these neighborhoods where you have the smaller lots. So I believe for a 4,000 square foot lot or smaller, you have to have 500 feet per unit of recreational space.
Per residential unit. If you have 4,000, if you have 150 4,000 square foot lots for every one of those homes, you have to have 500 square feet of recreational
Correct.
space.
You're saying that better.
I'm just clarifying.
Yes.
So if it doesn't all have to be in one spot, though, right? Because as I drive around like some of the communities, I'll see like a little tiny half-acre park with a swing set and some gym equipment and a little ramada and picnic tables and stuff like that in a grassy area. So they can accomplish that in any number of ways by spreading that out throughout the whole community.
That's correct. And when they're doing their platting of the subdivision, they'll put in little pocket parks in certain places and maybe a little bit of a bigger green space in another area. And we have a recreational subdivision manual where we help design what we're looking for and what kinds of amenities go together. And speaking of a patio and a swing set and a playground and those kinds of things. So we try to work with the developers to come up with a good recreational plan. I think it's called a recreational area plan, a RAP, I believe is what we call it.
I like it. That's a wrap.
As they go
Not
through.
yet. We're not done yet.
Development services with the help of Parks and Rec, and they're planning their development. So we try to make it so that there are things that people who live within that subdivision can walk to, take advantage of.
So I guess this gets down to the heart of this question that came in kind of indirectly. Why in the world, Jim, doesn't your crew then go in and take care of all these pocket parks and these neighborhood parks? Why don't you guys take care of it so that the community doesn't have to pay HOA fees for it?
Well, I think, too, and it comes down here, obviously, to labor across the board, and where are we maximizing and being most intelligent with taxpayer dollars? And we feel as if the focus has been that we do develop properties that are a destination, and I think we've gone over that pretty thoroughly about the amenities that are in those parks. And for instance, a restroom. I mean, every employee's day is broken down into how much time it takes to maintain that property. For instance, a restroom, it takes 45 minutes to disinfect it and clean it. I could break the park down like that, and we would then have a number of exactly how many full-time employees we need to take care of that 48-acre property. With that being said, we already, I think, are lean in regard to how we take care of those properties. And there's two other areas, Terry, that we take care of that a lot of people don't know about that are very, I think it's important that we do it. I know it's important.
One of those a path?
Well, our loop system.
Yeah.
Our loop system it's a tremendously highly used amenity. And the nemesis of a trail system is erosion and dirt getting on the path. And we live in an environment that basically the traditional monsoon from June 15th to September 15th and then winter rains, we have to be tenacious with big sweepers, industrial sweepers on the loop system, which we have from Iona to Sanders Road, which is about 13 and a half miles. And then there's like 3 times that many trails in other places. But that trail system alone, Terry, last month, an electronic counter, we had 14,603 passerbys on the electric counter. It's a quarter mile north of the Cortero Bridge on the west bank of the Santa Cruz. 14,603 passerbys.
In 1 month?
In 1 month.
Wow.
So, we're conservatively getting over 120 users a year. Now, in the summer, it goes down a little bit in the hotter months. But the point is that the injuries can be very serious. A cycling accident can be very serious. But that's something I think sometimes when people are looking at park systems in general, they forget about the trails that we take care of. And that's not taking in what we're taking care of in the Tortolitas with the trail system, which is also extremely popular. But the other thing that I want to mention is the warshes. From a standpoint of flooding, and during the monsoon season in particular, we have a very high acre of large warshes, particularly in the Connell Ranch area, that need to be mowed and maintained regularly. And there's crews that have to do that. There's also about 155 miles of road systems that we have full-time crews. We do have Department of Corrections staff that we use, as you know, but it's over 150 miles of road landscaping that we have crews out on every day taking care of. So the warshes, the roads, the loop, these are things that when you look at it from the outside, and more of not to insult anybody, but from more of a simplistic point of view of parks, you don't realize these other assets that we maintain that it's for safety and it's a lot of time. So for us to take care of a 2-acre property, it's not an efficient, I think, manner to expend taxpayer dollars.
So we're spread, what you're saying is we're spread pretty thin with the assets that we currently have, and adding a bunch of more pocket parks and neighborhood parks just stretches us to the limit that we wouldn't be able to maintain them anyway.
Over
Is that pretty
over
accurate?
50 square miles. So there's the windshield time alone. And
Yeah.
of course, our police officers are covering like 125 square miles, I think
Yeah.
it is. But
Yeah.
we're 50 square miles in parks. So yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Excellent. So Jane, another question to the heart of this issue is, could an HOA say, you know what, we don't want to have this park anymore. We want to turn it over to the town and have them take care of it so we can lower HOA dues. Can they do that? Like legally, can they do it?
Legally,
Let's start there.
Legally, it's certainly possible, but it would have to be with the town's consent.
Yeah.
Typically to go back to that soccer fields in Gladden Farm, for example, when we had agreed ahead of time that would eventually be turned over to the town before the developer built it. So then there's a process where once the developer completes construction, they submit a closeout package, which goes to our development engineering and our Parks and Rec team, and they make sure that the park amenity, in this case the soccer fields, are built to town standards, and anything gets fixed that needs to be fixed. And there's a formal process for them then transferring ownership of that park to the town, and the town formally accepting it into our inventory for maintenance purposes. So there is a process where that could take place. But if it's not something that the town is interested in owning and maintaining and taking on, then that's the practicality is that's not going to happen.
So I feel like finally there's a question that Terry can answer as the town manager. Could they legally? Yes. Would the town accept any pocket parks and neighborhood parks? The answer is no. A hearty no. And that's not to offend anybody. It's just so you understand that, as Jim was so clearly articulating, we have a huge amount of parks and streets and pathways and washes to maintain, and there simply isn't the capacity to be able to take on more assets into our inventory to continue to do that. So I understand that HOA fees are an issue for people. We're living in a time where sometimes it's hard to make ends meet, and finding a way to reduce fees any way you can, going through your cable bill and getting rid of Hulu and YouTube TV and whatever other subscriptions you have so you can reduce your monthly costs. I understand the desire to reduce monthly costs, but I can tell you unequivocally the town would not be interested in taking on more assets than what we already have. So I think that we covered pretty much the issues at hand. I'm curious if there's anything that either you, Jim, or you, Jane, would like to add in closing here.
I don't think so.
One last thing I would say is I think from a quality of life perspective, I think we've done a very good job as a town partnering with developers. And I know Mayor Honey, when he was serving as mayor, and current council, having the ability, and both you and Jane said it, Terry, the ability to walk to a park property from your house has always been a priority for the town. And then having these destination properties to serve children and athletics, et cetera, et cetera. It's quality of life. And I think as a town, having both types of parks, I think that the town continues to strive for that level of high quality of life and 5-star service.
Outstanding. And good way to wrap things up. Thank you, listeners, for joining us and for sending in your questions. We greatly appreciate that. Until next time. Submit your questions by visiting maranaaz.gov/realtalk, and we'll answer them right here. To receive notifications for new releases, remember to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, remember to follow the town on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on current news and events.